All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of SCMP Live Chat. This week we have another incredible guest from the country of Canada, man. Canada is showing much love to SCMP MMA, and all I can do is show love to them. So, we got Adam. You might have seen Adam on the ESPN broadcast. He pops up from time to time, and yeah, let's get into that first. Like how it's I'm pretty sure you're confused too, just like I am. But how do they even select who goes on the broadcast? Because you would think like they would just put celebrities and
Yeah.
fighters, but really they don't. They have people that they select, and I've also been on the broadcast many times. I don't know how I get on there. So do you know?
Well, okay. So, are you hashtagging it? You're putting the event
Of
hashtag. I
course,
think
of
I
course.
think that I think that's helping because from what I've heard, there's a guy that works for the UFC, and I don't want to say his name because I know who the guy is. And I just don't want because I know people are going to start messaging him saying put me on the broadcast. I never talked to him by any means, just a few times on Twitter. But I know who the guy is. He's a production guy at the UFC. I think that when he sees good tweets, he puts them up. Like it's not like every event I'm getting a tweet, John, and I'm saying the same with you. But every few I will. This just started in May too. Like I was surprised when the UFC came back in May. That's when they started doing this. It's been a pleasant surprise, John. I'm not gonna lie, man. It's nice to get like a text message from a friend that I haven't seen in a while. Yo, I just saw your face and your name on TV, dude. I was like, that's pretty sick, man. So for me, it's cool. You know what I mean? But I don't make tweets to get on TV, bro. I make tweets because that's my opinion I want to share with the world. You know what I mean? But I'm not trying to end up on TV. Same with you, man. You're just giving your thoughts, paying no mind to anything else. And then if it gets on there, it's pretty cool. So for me, it's a bonus, John. It's nothing like that. I'm not like making tweets so they can go on TV. But I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty damn cool when I see my name pop up in the left hand corner, man.
Yeah, it is cool, and like when I first popped on, it was like, okay, that's kind of cool, like I've never been on the broadcast before. Usually when they did that in other promotions, it was like celebrities and that's it. They would only put on like no names, and myself being on there, and also somebody from Asia, what I mean, that
Yeah.
that covers the sport. I don't think anybody from this side of the world gets on the ESPN broadcast unless they're a fighter. So it's cool to see, and yeah, and now I've been on there so many times that I just like don't even care. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I was on there. But it was cool. Like last week, Shogun was fighting, and Shogun, I was watching him fight in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and to see my name next to him on the broadcast, it was kind of cool to, have that. But other than that, what I mean, it's just like it's now it's normal. Now it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, you're on there,
It's cool though.
whatever.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. It's obviously a nice little gesture from
Mhm.
the UFC producers and stuff. Like, I just think they like good content. So I'm not really necessarily sure if they're looking for me or for you, John. I just think they probably look at the hashtag, and if he recognizes the guy, then he'll probably put it up there. Like most of the people they do put up are recognizable, I'd say, for the most part. But occasionally you will have a few random fans. But for the most part, it's like journalists and stuff. And it's nice though, man. It's like a little bit of recognition. The thing that was cool was they actually said my name last week because they put my tweets up and they never said my name, which I don't like. Honestly, I'm totally fine with that, by the way. Like, I don't have a problem with that. But when Brendan Fitzgerald actually did mention my name, that was pretty cool, dude, because I don't think they've ever said my name in the broadcast. And for guys who've been covering the sport literally for 10 years, this is my 10th year doing this. To finally get some recognition is nice. I'm not going to lie. But that's not why I do this, man. I do this because I love the sport, John. That's why I chose this to be my living, dude, because I love it. You know what I mean? I wouldn't want to do anything else, and I'm pretty sure that you're the same way. Like, you obviously have something else that you're doing, but I know that you want to do MMA full time. I know that's your goal. And you've been part of this industry for a few years now. And I think that you've seen the good and bad parts of it, man. But the good parts for me are far away the bad parts. And, for me, like, there's nothing else I'd rather do. So it's nice to get some recognition, but it's not like, dude, I think some people might see that and be like, oh, they might be like, oh, who is this guy? This is a guy who's been doing this for 10 years, making a living from this for 10
Yeah.
years. Like, and it's not like I've always been making, a decent amount of money. Like, it's been really hard at times, John. Like, it's a very difficult business. So I'm getting off on a tangent there, obviously. But the point is, like, it's nice to get this recognition, but it's not like it came from nowhere. I've been grinding away for a long time, and I know that you've been grinding away now for several years yourself, man. So it definitely feels good, and it'll feel good for a long time because, again, I love what I do, man. And I know you're the same way.
Yeah, man. Like I fully respect, you've been in the game much longer than I have, man. And I feel like a lot of these, I guess, MMA media members, they forget like a lot of these guys, even Ariel, man, he's been doing it.
Yep.
I man, for a long time. Luke Thomas for a long time. You go back in their catalog and watch what they've done in like from the mid 2000s. They put in their work, man. They didn't just hop on and like create some like scandal or something like that, and that's what happened. But going back to making the broadcast, I also made the broadcast with John Anik. That was pretty cool, man.
Right, I do remember that's
yeah.
awesome. And I think you made a great point. And when we talked about what we were going to discuss in the podcast, one thing you did want to talk about was like media and stuff like that. For me, like one of the things that when I first started in this business, I was always looking for guys that I could look at up to as mentors and stuff like that. And it's been hard to find mentors. I think I've met more peers than mentors, but there are some guys that I did look up to, especially when I first started getting the business. I remember 2013 when Jones fought Gustafsson, they had a party here in Toronto and a lot of the media members went. And I remember talking to John Morgan from Junkie, and Greg Savage used to work for Sherdog. And I must have spent like half an hour having a beer with these guys, just talking to them. And it's like, dude, they were telling me about these little tiny shows they'd go to in like the mid 90s, like when it wasn't even legalized in like Texas and stuff, man. So like, when you see a guy like John Morgan, and you wonder how this guy has his job, and you're thinking, oh man, he's so lucky he's got this job at Junkie. Dude, this guy's been doing it for 25 years.
Yeah.
You know, John. So it's not like these things just happen by accident, guys. But having said that, if you want to make this your career, you can do it. Because I think, John, you're the perfect guy to use an example. Because I'll be honest, 2 years ago I didn't know who you were. Now the last few years you're everywhere now, John. Like you're everywhere. So it just shows that like hard work, dedication, all that stuff, like that does play a factor too. You also got to be talented. You got to know what you're talking about. You're clearly a guy that's got some knowledge from the sport, and that's why people respect you, man. If you're a guy that's giving bad takes all the time, no one's going to listen to you. But if you're consistently making good takes, if you're consistently, sharing your opinion and you're consistently showing passion for the sport, I think you will overall achieve in it. But again, when I got into it, I was talking to these guys, and they were doing it for like 15 years longer than before I got into it. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm a guy who got into it at a good time. I was like 22 years old when I started writing about MMA. That's what I wanted to do. Not many people believed in me at the time, John. I was told by a lot of people, don't do this. Like, this is not a good career choice. Don't do this. Don't do it. Just go get a trade or, do something in tech or something like that. But I was like, you know what? I want to do this because I like to do this. And my parents were definitely right for a while because, the first 3 years were tough, man. But, eventually it's like you start to get good at what you're doing. I feel right now, I feel like I'm at the top of my game, There's obviously tons of improvements I can make, and I'd like to make those. But, considering like when I look back at where I came from, the other day I made a tweet actually, John. It was just 10 years recently passed since the first time I went to a UFC card in Detroit, UFC 123, Machida versus Rampage. That was the first card I ever saw in person. And I started going, I went to school starting like the next month for sports journalism. A year later, I had my first job in the business. So, I was looking back at that. And I'm like, man, I've been doing this for a decade now. Like it's like the journey's been so long, and it's like there's lots of bumps in the road too. You know how many times I wanted to quit, and there's a few times where I did leave for a while, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore because the money just wasn't there. But I feel like the sport's finally kind of like really just emerging as a big player post COVID, being the first sport back and stuff. So I feel like the sport is booming right now. Like there's obviously things they want to have fans, and I get that it'll happen, but I think it's a good time for the sport. So for me, John, it's like I'm a guy that I'm pretty content with my position right now. I don't think I'm going to lose my job anytime soon. So for me, I like to see new people come in the business, and especially people that are knowledgeable and smart. Like my friend Cole Shelton, he's like 21 years old and he's killing it, man. Yeah. And I know you're going to have him on your show next week. I love seeing that. You know what I mean? I've been trying to be a mentor to him, because he's great. And when I was, like I said, 10 years ago, when I got in this business, I wanted to mentor. There was someone that I did look up to as mentor that turned into be a huge scumbag. So it's unfortunate. You got to really make sure you're picking the right people because, that goes for any walk of life though, John. I always like to pick people's brains and stuff. And you do need peers too. Like me and James Lynch, who's another guy I think you've had on, obviously, and Aaron Bronsteter. Aaron Bronsteter gave me my first job in the business in 2011. He's the first guy who hired me. And I'm still friends with him 9 years later. James, I met James the same time, and 9 years later, we're still friends. So having those peers is so important too. People that you can bounce your work off and stuff and get your opinion on. I remember when me and James first started, John, like we would, email each other our articles and stuff like that. We both didn't really know what we'd want to do in this business. You see what he's doing now. So the journey's long, man. And talking to you beforehand, you said before we went on the air, you were like, me and you do different things. And maybe you want to get into that now, like how there's different segments of the media. It's not just like there's not just one job that's like MMA journalist. Like there's different segments to that job. If you want to talk about that.
No, definitely, man. And I think that's so important, especially when you first start out. A lot of people think like you start out and you're just all of a sudden you're in this position of this is what you want to do. And to be honest with you, you got to try everything. Because when I first started, I went to shows, you know, like when Road was like doing their shows in like a small hotel, like ballroom, you know what I mean? And I was doing play-by-play, which is the worst position you could have in MMA media, is doing play-by-play of every round and doing it, you know, live, like at the show. And you don't really get the benefit of the replays or nothing. You just have to do it. And I feel like because I went through all of that, that makes me much better now. Like, I don't even know how many years later. I think it's been like 6 or 7 years now. So, you know, a lot of people feel like just because they just started noticing me now, they think like I just started right now, but that's the farthest from the truth, man. Like I did, like you said earlier, I did quit for a little bit. I felt like, oh, this is not working out. But then eventually somehow I just switched gears and thought like, man, this is something that I need to get on and do it 100%. And if I don't do it 100%, then I may as well not do it at all. And I think that's the important thing, is a lot of these people that are coming in and kind of complaining about this media space, if you're not going to do it 100%, then you might as well stop doing it, because it's just not worth it, man. Like, you're not going to get paid that much. And if you do get paid, you should feel fortunate that you're getting paid, especially at the start. And going back to what you were saying, the journalistic angles, man, like I said, play by play, that's something you could start with. You could start with like previews of events if you're into the writing aspect. Right now I'm kind of mentoring this guy that just graduated from journalism school in London, and he actually moved to Korea. He's Korean British or whatever, and he moved to Korea because England is like locked down, so you can't really do much. So he's here after he graduated, and I'm just trying to help him out, man. And he's 24 years old, man. Like like if I had somebody like that, like to help me, like to show you like, okay, these are some of the things that you might want to do and get into, and then you could figure out like, okay, what's the angle, what's your angle. And you were talking about earlier that you started off, or I don't know if you started off, but you did the play-by-play also, which is
that's not fun.
It's just brutal, right? But when did you transition from that? That's
that happened like later in my career. I mean, so just to give some context, like I have a degree in history, so I went to university for 4 years, and most people that graduate with history typically go into academics, so teaching and stuff. I'll be honest, man, like I do believe you do some teaching on the side, John. Like for me, I'm not saying I wouldn't do teaching, because I would, especially with journalism, and social media and stuff. I think I could teach that stuff. But at the time, I was a kid and I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to deal with children or even adults. I want to do something else. So I luckily found this program for sports journalism, which was a year program, postgraduate. So I did that for a year with the goal of being an MMA journalist. The first time I met my classmates, we started in January 2011. I remember I met everyone in December 2011. The UFC MMA had just been legalized in Ontario in 2010. So I remember just talking to a friend of mine in a class who turned out to be a good friend of mine. Actually, he's doing really well. He's working for the Memphis Grizzlies now. So like a lot of people from my class did really well, which is nice to see. But this guy, I remember talking to him like literally, John, 10 years ago, like almost to the day 10 years ago. And I was like, let's go watch UFC 129. Like that's how long it's been, right? So during 2011, like I said, the UFC started doing shows in Ontario. They started just doing shows in general in Ontario. So the first show I ever went to, actually, besides the UFC in Detroit, which I've gone to, there was a small show in Ontario. It was the first ever one at a casino here. There was only a few thousand people there, but actually, a lot of the fighters on the card ended up in the UFC. Like Misha Serkinov was on that card, and a few other guys, Jordan Meehan. So they all ended up in the UFC. So looking back, it's pretty cool. But I remember I went to school, and they had two different streams, basically, broadcasting or writing. And I'm like you, dude. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was like really shy back then. I didn't really want to be in camera. I tried it. I wasn't very good at the teleprompter in school. So I was like, I'm going to focus on the writing thing. Thankfully, a internship popped up at the Score. Aaron Bronsteter, who's still really relevant in this business, he was the first guy who gave me a shot, brought me on as an intern for him. And I was there for a few months as an intern, and then they hired me on. I was working for a year. And I loved that job. I loved it. I worked with some really, really good people at job. And there's some people that weren't so good. I really don't want to like trash people right now, even though I should, because the one guy's a huge jerk, and anyone who knows me, they'll know who I'm talking about. But in general, it was a really good foot in the door for me just to get that experience, even though I was a kid, right? And I made a lot of mistakes along the way too. A year into that job, the score had been bought out, and for the score, I was doing a lot of like prep and researching, writing, transcribing, and stuff like that. It was just, again, first job, so doing pretty much everything, not broadcasting though, behind the scenes stuff. But a year into that job, and I loved it. I'm like, I'll probably finish my career. And there was like, it was downtown Toronto. There was lots of like really good looking girls that worked there. I was like, this is awesome. Everyone likes sports. Like, this is great. I'm like 22 years old, John. I'm like, this is great. Well, woke up one morning and they said, Adam, don't come in today because, we did some reorganization and like half the people at the place got fired, not fired, but we just got let go because they had been bought out by a bigger company and they already had their own people doing like MMA and stuff. So that was in 2012, October 2012. I remember that phone call, John. I just heard my phone ringing. I was like, hello? And they were like, just don't come in. I was like, what the hell? So it was a huge shock to my system. But I remember that same day I went on Twitter. I was like, hey guys, I just got let go. And at the time I was actually kind of getting well known a little bit. And this is 2012, covering some of the events in Toronto. And I remember putting on Twitter like, hey, I just lost my job. Does anyone have any work? And I remember a few websites had hit me up back then. And dude, I didn't know what a freelancer was back then. Are you kidding me? I had no idea what that was. I was like, okay, you get a job at a newspaper, you work there your whole life. That's what I thought it was, John. I really did. So I started freelancing, and I was doing that for a few years. And Nick, MMA Oddsbreaker, brought me on soon after. I've been with Nick for almost 10 years now. I mean, 9 years, I guess, right? And then same with MMA Ratings. I've been there for 9 years. Small websites, niche websites, I get that. But I respect those guys, man. They've had me on staff. They've been paying me for almost a decade. So love those guys. But over the years, taking a lot of different jobs for different websites and stuff like that, and mostly doing writing, right? Not really doing the broadcasting. A few years ago, I was doing some personal issues, and I took a leave of absence from the sport. I thought maybe this wasn't for me anymore because I was doing okay, but not as good as I wanted to be, John. And I feel like there were so many other people doing so good at that time. I was like, okay, maybe take a step back. Maybe this is what's for you. So I took a step back. I tried to go back to school for sports business management, and it wasn't for me either. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try the MMA thing one more time. I want to make it work this time. And that was in like 2016. I'd taken a year off. Pretty much, I was just depressed for like a whole year, man. I'll be honest with you. I had been dealing with a lot of personal issues in my own life, and it really just was hurting me professionally. So I needed time off. Since coming back, though, it's been great. And I've been steadily, gaining more recognition and more writing. When I joined BJ Penn last year, that was a big life changer for me because I didn't really know what to expect when I joined their website, man. But it's created so many opportunities for me as far as writing news and stuff. And in the last, probably the last 2 years, I'd say, maybe the last year especially, I have transitioned to more of the broadcasting stuff now. Like, I'm not as polished as a lot of these guys like you and James are. I get that. But, I'm trying to make it work. And I think I'm doing an okay job at it. So for a guy who's been mostly writing to switch to broadcasting, it's different. And I think a lot of people are in the same boat as me right now, especially with COVID. You're working from home. A lot of people are in the same spot. So I'm enjoying it, man. It's nice to get a different perspective. But I've literally had like every job in this industry, guys. Interviews, written news, features, like play-by-play, everything. I did everything in this business. But right now, I like news grinding, bro. I really like to do the news grinding thing. And I love the gambling thing, man. I've always liked the betting aspect of the sport. It's always intrigued me. So I just talked for a bunch, dude. But I just want people to know, like, it's not like you just, send a resume in, you get a job, and that's your job for the rest of your life. It's not like that. My dad's been working at the same place, John, for 40 years. It's not like that anymore, man. It's not like that at all. He's literally worked at the same place since he was 18. He's 58 now, right? So It's not like that now. You know how it is, John. Like, it's a lot of movement now. But I'll tell you right now, man, I never expected to be a full-time freelancer. I didn't want to do that. But I love it now, dude. And I really want to do anything else. Like, I love the freedom of working from home. I love, just pretty much anything. Anytime there's some news, I'm writing about it. So I love that, man. I really enjoy it, guys. It's a great industry. If you got to be committed to it, though, it's not something you can be 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You got to be 2 feet in, John. I think you would agree 100% with me on that.
Yeah, even like you said, you got the angle of being the beat writer, and then you write some features from time to time, and now you're dabbling into the broadcasting, and you're broadening your horizons, which I think that's so important for everybody. Maybe it might not work out in the beginning, but you got to continue going, and you've been here for 10 years, so it's not like you just started last year, you know what I mean? So yeah, you know, the recognition, I feel like if you're wanting the recognition from the start, you're never going to get the recognition. You just got to put your head down and just keep going and going, and make some allies in media, you know what I mean? Don't go out there and think like you have to criticize everybody for their opinions. I don't think that that's important, you know. I think also is people, man, people just, they just don't know like how to start. And I think James, he does a good job of like putting up those videos and stuff like that. But I feel like a lot of people think like they have egos and they think like, oh, I don't need to do that. But you gotta think James has been in the game for as long as you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, he's actually been in it longer than me. And
yeah,
you know, when I first met him, we were both kind of in the same spot. And he really did transition to the broadcasting more than me, but he still does some writing and stuff. But he's obviously really excelled in that, John, as you know.
yeah, definitely.
But man, it's like when he started, he was interviewing prospects who no one heard of. Like I remember being like, "Who is this guy you're interviewing?" The crazy thing is, half these guys ended up in the UFC eventually, right? So that's another thing that James always tells people. He's like, interview prospects, and I don't think he's wrong, because when I started at the Score, we used to, actually, the Score, again, the first place I worked, and a great experience. You know, part of that experience was they had a promotion called the Score Fighting Series. So we actually, like the place I worked, which was a broadcasting company, we also had a promotion, and they had like 7 or 8 events. And a lot of these guys ended up in the UFC. Elias Theodoro, Gerald Mearshart, Desmond Green. A lot of these guys ended up in the UFC. That's where I started interviewing these guys. That's where I was picking the brains of promoters, John. It was these little events at like little banquet halls with like a couple, maybe 1,000 people in them. That's where you got to start, unfortunately. You know, people just want to jump into the UFC. I'm on the UFC broadcast now because I put the work in for 10 years. It's not like I would just jump on. It's not like they randomly chose me, John. I'm pretty sure they have a system of how they're putting people on, because again, it's usually journalists. But I think you're right. Like, you want to know how to start. I think, if you want to start in this business, you got to find a place to just put some writing out there. And unfortunately, you're probably going to have to work for free for a little bit. I'm not saying that's something I would, tell people to do, to work for free. You got to have a price. But John, if you have no experience, why would someone pay you too, right? Exactly. I interned for free and worked for free for 3 or 4 months, and was lucky enough to get a job. And since then, I've had a paying job. But even my first job, I think I made $13 an hour, and I worked 5-hour shifts, so 25 hours a week. It was not much money. I was just a college student. I was living in my parents' basement. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but I did it because I knew that one day I would make more money, and one day I will. And it's crazy because like this journey's taking me from like literally a kid to a man. Like yesterday, I found out that my girlfriend's pregnant, so I'm going to be a father, man. Like, so it's pretty incredible. Thanks, man.
Breaking news.
It is breaking news. I haven't put that public yet. I told a few people. I told James, I told Cole, but I haven't really told anyone. I told my family. I just found out, man. Like, I'm 32 years old, so it came as a surprise for me. But the point is, like, 10 years ago, dude, I was just some guy who loved the sport. Not 10 years later, this is giving me a living to have a family with now. You know what I mean? So you can do it, guys. Seriously, if you really want to do MMA, you can do it. Now, you just gotta, like I said, gotta find some mentors. If you're living in Asia and Korea, I think John would be a great guy to look up to. There's a lot of other guys at South China Morning Post too. John, Tom here in Canada, and he works for you guys, but he's great. He's another guy. Tom's my peer. I work with Tom, but he's my friend. He's also a guy I look up to too, because he's been in the business a long time. I'm always bouncing ideas off people, man. The other thing, John, you can't be afraid to ask questions in this business. You have to ask questions. As a journalist, to me, that's number one things. You have to ask questions. So that that's to the fighters, to the fans, everything, but it's also to your fellow journalists, because you want to get better at this, right? I want to get better. You want to get better, John. But we love it, right? There's a reason we do it. It's because this is the best sport in the world, right?
Yeah, it is. It is the best sport in the world, man. It's the greatest sport, and the fighters are the best. And going back to like when I started, I was writing a lot. I didn't really do any videos at all. Like pretty much, yeah. My first interview that I ever did was with Will Chope when he came to Korea, and it was in his hotel room, and I just got lucky with that one. But after that, I did a couple here and there. But then I was just writing mostly, and then I was just like, man, I want to get into this video more. I felt like the video would be much better for myself. So I started to do a podcast, but the podcast wasn't getting any views, and I was just focusing on all my time on the podcast and not in the writing. And then I said, man, I have to switch it up. I either have to stop doing this or I have to switch it up. And that's when I started to get into the video interviewing stuff,
Right.
and then just started pumping out, just doing anybody, like everybody interviews, like who in Asia do I know? Who can I connect to from these coaches, from this fighter to this fighter, and just doing interviews over and over and over and over. And then after a while, people started noticing, I mean, they started noticing that I'm doing these interviews and I'm pumping out so many interviews. And I'm telling you, in the beginning, I sucked. Like, I'm surprised, like, some of these fighters would came back and interviewed with me again, that I interviewed in the beginning. But a lot of these guys, man, like, I built relationships with them before they were in the UFC. A lot of them are in the UFC.
Yeah.
Like, think of it like this. Trevin Jones, this year, Trevin Jones, he takes a short notice fight. I've been interviewing him for years, and he's in the UFC now. Get that $50K bonus. Kai Kamaka, I've been interviewing him for years. He gets a short notice fight in UFC, and he gets a bonus. Sasha Palatnikov, I interviewed him for years. He gets a short notice fight, gets a bonus. Man, it's just like, you got to build these bridges, and I think that that's also important. Is find your angle, build the bridges. Find a mentor if you can find a mentor, and also be careful of who you're trying to find a mentor in, right? You got to find some people.
Absolutely.
And then, you just got to cut your teeth and get experience, man. You're going to make mistakes. Everybody's going to make mistakes, and you just got to learn from the mistakes and just keep going forward. For the people in the chat, we're going to get to the questions eventually. I just wanted to get into this because I think Adam has a unique story in that, you know what I mean? Because you did take that break in the middle, and you were like, and you could have went another road and you never come back, man. And
I was close, bro. Honestly, I was close because I was trying to work for the Maple Leafs here in Toronto, and I was pretty close to working for them, and then it just didn't work out. And I was like, you know what? Why don't I try the MMA thing one more time? I'm just looking at the comments. I really appreciate that. Hey, Drake and Tristan. So thanks, guys. Yeah. I mean, I just found out like this week. So I'm still kind of confused what happened, but it's pretty fun, man. It's exciting. By the way, I was looking at the first event I ever saw, John, besides UFC, like the first regional show. Look at these guys that were on this card. Jason Young, he made it to the UFC. Jordan Meehan made it to the UFC. Josh Berkman was in the UFC. Jason Sago made it to the UFC. Misha Serkinov made it to the UFC. You think I knew who those guys were the first time I covered that card? No, I had no idea who they were. Misha Serkinov's ranked number 10 years later in the world in the UFC. So, some of these guys that at first you might scoff at and be like, these guys aren't that good. They're nobodies. John, maybe they'll turn into a superstar one day. That's the crazy thing with the sport. You really never know who turns into a superstar, man. Because I'll be honest, 6 months ago, I had never heard of Khamzat Chimaev, and you look at him now. No one had heard of him. Let's be honest. No one even knew who this guy was, unless you're watching Brave FC and you're a hardcore fan. And I'm a hardcore fan, but even I still didn't know who he was. That's it happens so quick sometimes. But anyways, just wanted to say I appreciate the kind comments in the comment section, guys. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Drake.
Adam's gonna hit another gear when the baby pops.
Dude, I'm trying to grind as much as I can right now. Like, you guys, if you follow me on Twitter, you see how much content I'm pumping up. I'm like, I need to make the money, man. I got diapers and stuff, dude.
Exactly.
I gotta buy like food and stuff, man. You know how it is, John. You got a few kids, so
no, I got one kid, and that's enough, man. That's enough. It's enough, man. It's a handful right there. For me too. Yeah, man. Like, I really like to talk to people that are doing it freelance. If you have a full-time job, like last week you had Aaron on, he has a full-time job. He's in a good position, but him also, he's been in the grind for a long time, man. And like, that's what I respect out of everybody. People that are in the grind for a while, and they deserve everything that they get, man, because even if I don't know them, but I've seen them, do their work and get better and improve and get a good job. Like Mike Keck, I didn't even know him maybe a few months before he got his job at MMA Fighting, but I've always respected him and what he's been doing, because he's been in the grind doing it from all these different websites, and he almost quit too, and then he came back, and it's a great story, man. I think a lot of people should hear those stories. Now let's get into some of this MMA stuff, man. MMA news, man. You know what it is. The first one, let's get into the Figueiredo and Moreno UFC 256. They're going to book it 3 weeks after the last event. And the reason why they're doing this is because the Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling fight has been postponed to next year. We're going to get into that too. It's all interconnected. But do you feel like this fight, being booked so close to the last fight. Is it just a powder keg of disaster that could happen in this fight, like leading up to it? Because Figueiredo, he's known to miss weight, and we've never seen a UFC fighter get their belt taken away because they miss weight. But man, I don't know. I don't want to be negative, but man, this is something that is a real dangerous or sensitive situation.
I was surprised when they announced it like right after the event the other night. But now we know, obviously, because they have no options. Like there's no one available to fight in that card. Remember, it was supposed to be Amanda Nunes against Megan Anderson originally. That fight fell off. Nunes is hurt, I think. Then this fight falls out with Yan and Sterling. They added the fight with Tony Ferguson and Oliveira. That's an amazing. I can't wait for that fight. That fight's so sick, by the way. I wish it was 5 rounds. I will say that. But they just didn't have options, John. They're definitely praying that Figueiredo makes weight. I mean, he obviously has struggled. He missed weight against Benavidez, I believe, the first time, right? And he did finish that fight eventually, but the second time, at least he made weight and finished it again. I mean, he looked amazing against Perez. But Moreno looked good against Royval, too. I actually thought Royval might actually win that fight, and he was in there and pretty much gets dominated. He was hurt in that fight, got injured, obviously. But, I like the matchup. I actually think Moreno probably should have fought Figueiredo at the last card before Perez. So, to me, it's like whatever. But it's definitely risky, man, because it's historic. No one's ever turned around this quick as a champion. This is the quickest turnaround ever in the UFC as a champ, 3 weeks, only 21 days. So that's a short turn, and for the challenger as well. Not that Moreno has I don't think a problem making weight, but we have seen Figueiredo struggle. Like he's a very muscular guy for 125. I think he'll make weight though. I'm pretty sure he'll do it. I mean, he's got too much riding. If he misses weight, he's gonna lose his belt. So to me, he's got too much riding on it. I think they paid him a lot of money to do this. Obviously, did you see the clip on social media today? Did you see that the video of Dana White handing him the bag of money? You see it?
Yeah.
So he got screwed last week out of a bonus. I'm glad Dana did that. They're saying it's $50K. There might have been $100K in that bag. We really don't know.
That was a big stack.
That was a big stack of money. And I think there was more in the bag too. You didn't want to show it, but I'm pretty sure that they paid him a lot of money to do this. And I hope he makes weight. I mean, I love the matchup. It's a great fight. They seem to be all in on this guy, man. And to be honest with you, like, how can you blame him? Like, Mighty Mouse, another guy who was incredibly dominant at 125, was a great fighter, but he did actually have quite a bit of finishes. But if you ask most fans, they would say he's more of like a point fighter, whereas Figueiredo, you could never say that about him. And I'm not saying Demetrius is, because if you do look at his resume, he actually has a lot of finishes. Yeah. But when he was champion, John, people called him a boring fighter. I don't think they're saying that about Figueiredo. So to me, the UFC's all in on this guy. They love him. They love he's the flyweight champ. He better make weight though, man. If he misses weight, oh man, that's not good. I would hate for that fight to get canceled, because then you obviously wouldn't have a main event that's 5 rounds. But not only that, guys losing their belt on the scale, it's so Bush League. It does happen in other promotions. We've seen it in like lower level promotions, but at the UFC level, it's very rare. Like, I mean, a champion's never miss weight, right? Except for, I guess, Cormier, like when he grabbed the towel, I guess he was about to miss weight. That's it, though. Other than that, I mean, Travis Lutter missed weight as a challenger, and that's it, really. Guys, if you're in the UFC, you're almost always making weight. I really hope that they make weight, John. You're kind of worrying me, man, the fact you brought it up.
Well, he's going to be at the PI. He's going to be in Vegas, so I'm pretty sure they're going to keep track of him and his intake and everything, and make sure he doesn't fall off the diet and go in there. Yeah, Figueiredo, he's drained when he weighs in. You could tell, like, right when you look at him. Like, you look at Moreno when he weighs in, he still has a little bit of flub on him, you know what I mean? But, like, Figueiredo, man, he's shredded. Like, it doesn't seem like he has anything left. So I hope the UFC does right, gets him the proper nutrition, and we're gonna have a main event. In many ways, they could have just turned that into a fight night. I don't know why they would have to have a pay-per-view. Do they have, like, maybe they do have the deal with the ESPN that they have to have a certain amount of pay-per-views, and that's why they're doing this. But does it really matter? Because are you selling that many more pay-per-views because you have Figueiredo and Moreno as the main event?
I don't know. I mean, for me, I'm pretty sure they have to have 12 a year. At one point, they had 13 a year. They cut it down to 12. With COVID, I think they lost a couple, but I believe they made it up. I can't remember now, actually. They might be a little bit behind. So, yeah, I think they basically have to do one a month. That's contractually what they have to do. So it's a contract thing with the ESPN. I don't expect this card to do that great on pay-per-view. Looking at it, I mean, I don't think we have the numbers for last week's card. I don't believe I've seen them yet. I don't think that card did that great. Also, it really wasn't that great of a card. Let's be honest with John. It didn't turn out that great. kind of a long night. Although the main event was great, but I mean, this guy's incredibly dominant. He's kind of becoming popular. Maybe this card does a little better, but I don't know. Like, I know what you're saying. Like, how many is it really going to sell? I don't know. I can't see it doing more than a couple 100,000. I'll be honest. Like, and that's like the low, and that's at the high end. Just because I don't think Figueiredo and Moreno are like these huge stars. I would guess around 200,000. I think that's a pretty fair guess. What do you think?
I'm not really like a numbers guy. I don't really care about the numbers too
Fair
much.
enough.
But I just was wondering why they needed to have a pay-per-view. They could have just made it a fight night, and Ferguson and Du Bronx could have been a 5-rounder. That's what
that'd be sick.
Because to be honest with you, I thought when Figueiredo beat Perez, Moreno is the guy that you would line him up for the title shot. But I was thinking like, man, Henry Cejudo should come back, and fight for that title, man, to prove. Because right now, Figueiredo's making everybody forget about Cejudo and what he did at flyweight.
Yep.
Like, no one's talking about Cejudo.
I didn't even mention him a few minutes ago. I was just talking about DJ, and Cejudo's the guy who beat him, right? So he's absolutely worth talking about. I think he comes. I think he fights again, by the way. He's definitely coming back. I mean, he took a break. He found love. He broke up with his girlfriend now. Now he's got a new girl. Yeah. She's smoking hot, too, by the way. You guys go check some pictures, man. Good for him.
Yeah.
I think he'll come back, though, John, because, he's got a lavish lifestyle, man. He's got these smoking hot Brazilian supermodels he's dating. It costs a lot of money, man. You know what I mean? So he'll fight again. What I was thinking is he could fight Volkanovski at 145. That's what I was thinking for him. But I mean, that's obviously a different discussion. But I think that he could move up to 145 for that fight.
I could see him doing that, but man, why would Volkanovski take that fight? I don't know. If they give him a lot of money, I understand the money aspect, right? They give him a lot of money, but I don't see the UFC really pushing for Cejudo to come back and fight for the title. I don't see that. I don't, unless it's for 125 or maybe bantamweight, but bantamweight is stacked right now to where it's like Henry Cejudo doesn't fit in anywhere. Unless, now let's get to the next topic.
Sure.
TJ Dillashaw.
Yeah.
TJ Dillashaw comes back early next year, right? His suspension's up in January. He comes back most likely in February. Put him on like the co-main event against Cejudo at bantamweight. I think that is a great matchup. Maybe at the co-main event of Sterling Yan. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think of those prospects of a rematch between TJ and TJ 2.0? After you saw it.
I wouldn't mind it. I mean, honestly, I was really surprised how quick he lost. It was 2 years ago now. It's crazy, right? You know what's crazy, John? That card, January 2019, I think. Yeah, it was the same card Greg Hardy made his debut on. Since then, Greg Hardy's fought 8 times, and TJ was obviously suspended the whole time. Rachel Ostovich is finally fighting again. Like, she was suspended too, a little bit. But the point is, like, it's been 2 years, and these guys haven't fought yet. So I really have no idea how he's going to look when he comes back. We've heard stories about TJ training really hard and stuff. He looks good in the pictures, but without his juice, how good is he going to be, John? I was so disappointed when I heard he got caught, and that really bothered me because he was a guy that I think a lot of us thought was just a clean fighter, a really good fighter who had improved. And I remember meeting him years ago. I can't remember who he fought someone in Toronto years ago, and I never thought he'd be a champion. He became a champion, then he obviously lost his belt because he was a dumbass and he used PEDs. So I really have no idea how he's going to look when he comes back. I hope he's a clean athlete now who is just going to excel in his skill, John. But let's be honest, man. I mean, I'm pretty sure the stuff he was taking was helping him out and probably helped him become a better fighter.
Yeah, I was really disappointed too when that news came out because TJ Dillashaw was like one of my favorite guys to watch fight. And taking him out for 2 years, it really, created a massive hole. And to be honest with you, Peter Yan filled that hole at the bantamweight division.
I agree. I love Peter Yan. He's so good.
Peter Yan is a nasty, nasty individual right there. Like, he is so violent. Like, and even a potential of, like, if TJ does come back, you remember in the previous interview he said that the UFC was going to give him an immediate title shot when he returned in 2021. And was that, because I don't really see TJ as a guy that would lie too much, except for outside of the PED stuff. But for like matchups, it's hard to trust somebody, right? If they like got busted for PEDs and they're saying something, you're like, oh man, he's usually truthful about what he says, but then at the same time he did get busted by USADA. So I don't know. What do you think? Like, do you think like TJ if he comes back and they do reschedule Jan and Sterling for February, that he is the backup? Do you think the UFC would do that?
I don't know. I mean, like, he hasn't fought in forever, and I quite frankly think other guys have passed him at this point. You know, like Sandhagen. I think Sandhagen's passed him. Sandhagen's called for that fight, by the way. I wouldn't mind seeing that fight. I think Frankie Edgar would be a fun fight versus TJ too. That'd be a good fight. It's crazy because he hasn't fought in forever. He's not ranked, but I want to see him fight these top 5 guys because I still believe he's a skilled guy. But again, man, so many unanswered questions about this guy. Anytime a guy's missing 2 years and he can't use his magic beans anymore, you got to wonder how he's going to look when he comes back. I'm not sure, bro. I'm not convinced he's going to be the same guy anymore.
Yeah, the magic beans. You're right. It's like, how long was he using? Or how long was he taking the magic beans?
Then we heard rumors for a while. Like Cody Garbrandt was the one that was saying, "Hey, this guy, he's cheating. He's like alpha male," and no one believed anyone. No one believed him, right? I think at that point it was like the opposite. Like Cody was the heel and TJ was the face. And now a few years later, like Cody's the face. Everyone's like, Cody's awesome and TJ's a dick. So it's funny, right? Like one drug test and everything changes. Like
exactly.
Yeah.
And you know who else disappeared too? Dwayne Ludwig.
Yeah, I haven't heard much from Bang at all. Like I'm assuming he's still coaching. I haven't heard anything from him. But for a while, he was obviously like, I think one of the top coaches in the sport, especially with the striking. But once that incident with TJ happened, it feels like he's kind of disappeared a little bit. I still see him from time to time on Twitter, but I haven't really heard much, man. You don't see like the interviews and stuff that he used to do back when TJ was the champion. He was Bang Ludwig and TJ were doing interviews every week. Everyone wanted to hear about Bang Ludwig and his striking and his teaching. So yeah, I don't know what's going on with him.
Yeah, it's a weird situation there, but yeah, TJ, I feel like there's a lot of mystery around him when he returns, but skill wise, he could come back and do what Brian Ortega did when he faced off against the Korean Zombie.
Oh my gosh, I was so surprised by that, man. I gotta be honest, like, again, I do a lot of betting and stuff, and one of the things when you're looking at picking fights and betting on fights, you always look at when they last fought, and guys that have long layoffs usually lose. Not all the time. I mean, we've seen GSP come back when he fought Bisping or Cruz when he fought Mitsugaki, but I was surprised how good Ortega looked because it had been 2 years. He did get his ass kicked against Holloway. I was at that fight in Toronto. He got destroyed. Takes 2 years off, John. He looked like a different guy. So, he said, I basically got off social media. I trained my ass off, and now look at me. Hopefully, TJ's been doing the same thing. Maybe he can come back and be a better fighter because that version of Ortega we saw against Zombie last month, that's the best version I've ever seen of him. He looked amazing. And I'm with this guy, LJPH. I'm with you, bro. I think TJ Sandhagen's a great fight. The other guy, and he's not ranked, I don't think, but I love watching him fight, and he's kind of moving up the rankings, Casey Kenny, and they look like each other too. So it's like a doppelganger. Like it's like you're fighting yourself. They fight very similarly too. So that'd be a fun fight. But honestly, like he's a former champion. He's a big name. He'll probably fight a guy like Sandhagen, Edgar, someone like that ranked in the top 10.
Yeah, name value goes a long way in the UFC. It doesn't matter if you've been out for 2 years. It doesn't matter if you were busted by USADA. When you come back, they're gonna put you in the fire because you are TJ Dillashaw. And I want Edgar sounds good. Sandhagen sounds good because one thing about Sandhagen, he used to train with TJ, back in the day. So, they know each other really well. But I think they need to run back that Cejudo fight to see what really can happen.
It was such a quick stoppage too. Like I remember that fight. I was really surprised how. I mean, listen, Cejudo's a guy that did surprise me for a while. Like there was a few fights, John, where I didn't think he'd beat Mighty Mouse. I didn't think he'd beat TJ. I didn't think he'd beat Moraes. He goes in there and smashes them all. So I'm 100% believing in him now. But at the time, I was like surprised at how quick the ref stopped that fight. I mean, I'd like to see a rematch too, but we'll see. Because, by the way, that fight was at 125, right? So maybe at 135, it's a different fight. I think that cutting all that weight hurt TJ too. I remember when he was posting pictures of him like cutting weight, he looked like a ghost or something, man. Like he really had to cut a lot of weight to make 125. That, by the way, is the worst part of the sport. It's the weight cut. Like that is horrible.
He looked like the machinist.
Yeah, he did. He looked like Christian Bale in that movie. That's a great movie.
It was bad, man.
Yeah,
and,
I know.
Let's go to this before we talk about some other topics. Let's talk about this question. Tristan, he said, what is your opinion of one signing Amir Al-Akbari after USADA gave him a lifetime ban? Since one uses VADA for their organization, it doesn't make too much sense to me. Was Amir banned for life by USADA? Did that happen? I don't even know. But I know he did have a ban for like some organization.
Let me
like
just double check his
international
wiki. I mean,
organization.
I'm not donating to Ultras, and I just completely forgot what happened. So,
Yeah,
okay, so I remember him from Ryzen. Obviously, he went to the finals. He lost to Crow Cop.
yeah,
His last fight was in March 2019. Just looking at his Wikipedia, so it says he was signed by the. I remember this. He was signed last year, but he was handed a suspension. I guess he was just. I don't know. I didn't know he was suspended for life. I didn't know. I thought it was like a 4-year suspension to the max, but he just apparently signed with one in the summer, and he's fighting Islam Abasov. It says next week at one championship, Big Bang.
yeah.
So, I mean, this is a guy that is like as legit as it gets when it comes to wrestling and stuff, man. Like his wrestling is like elite. So he's 32, which is not that old for a heavyweight either, right? So I think there's some promise with this guy. As far getting the answer to the question, dude, let's be honest. If an MMA promoter can find a way to make a buck, they will. Let's be honest with you, man. I know you're going to agree with me on that, John. Like if they can, let's be honest. They like to say they have morals and stuff like that, and they have VADA and USADA and all this stuff. But if they can get the guy to come back and make a buck off his fight, I think they'll do it. So in this case, yeah. I mean, there's probably other guys in there that have similar situations like this guy that, they'll just go to Asia. It's not like he's the first guy to run off to Asia after getting banned in the UFC. Like Bigfoot Silva did it and a bunch of other guys, right? So it's common.
Well, when you look at him, Amir, right? If the UFC could sign him, because Amir, he's Iranian, which they're limited in their travel tremendously around the world, and if the UFC could have signed him, they would have signed him and put him on many shows, man. Like he's a hot commodity. You gotta look at it like that, fair and simple. Like like you say, he's 32 years old. He's got that tremendous wrestling background. He's got power in both hands. And he's going to be entertaining, man. You don't know what's going to come out of that guy, and what comes out of his mouth, what happens in the ring. It's just he brings an excitement level, and I feel like that's why One Championship signed him. I don't know about the USADA stuff and VADA. Of course, there's some weirdness with that, but they signed Vitor Belfort, and Vitor Belfort looks like he's on all the magic beans, you know what I mean? Like, like he went to Jack, and Jack, we took him up the beanstalk, and
I love it, man. This is the best analogy ever.
Yeah, he just rained down the beans. He just shook the beanstalk, and he just opened his mouth, and he's just catching them, right? It's just and like there's a bunch of guys out there that don't pass the smell test, but also in the UFC, I think there's guys that are doing extracurricular activities, and they just haven't gotten caught. You know what I mean? It's pretty much true. A lot of fighters say like there's some suspicious activities going around, you know what I mean? And even in the UFC with USADA, and USADA is great at catching people, but they're not catching everybody.
No, they're not. It's impossible, especially with COVID now. During COVID, they haven't been testing as much, especially like for international fighters. So you're right. There's definitely some guys that are cheating the system, especially this year. But I do think the sport's it's a lot better than it once was. Like, especially when I first got into it 10 years ago, like everyone was juicing. All these guys were using TRT. That was the popular thing at the time. Like Dan Henderson, Chael Sonnen, and these guys that were like going to their doctors saying, "Hey, I'm lacking testosterone." They're like the best fighters in the world lacking testosterone. It didn't make sense, right? So I'm glad they cleaned that part of the sport up. But there's also the argument that the sport's not as exciting now because guys aren't juicing. Because you look back at like Pride, where they literally wrote in the contracts like we're encouraging you to take steroids, like we want you to take steroids. Yeah. And I love Pride, by the way. It was my favorite promotion, but yeah, I definitely think the sport's different. But I'm all for a clean sport, man. Like, do you really want to like? I get it. Like they're like superheroes either way, but do you really want to know that your superheroes were all shooting a needle up their ass? Like I'd rather just a natural fighter. That's just me though, But having said that, I mean, dude, the amount of like legends that have been caught for PEDs in sport, like almost everyone except for like GSP and like Khabib, like almost every other legend has had something going on with them,
And everybody's accused everybody else of something, you know what I mean? And last week Aaron was talking about that, like, the level playing field. Like back then they didn't have the strenuous testing, so you just have to say, okay, you have to just like, I guess, speculate, you know what I mean? Like everybody was on it, right? That's what you have to look at it as. And now everybody's clean, right? But it's not true. There's people dirty, there's people clean back then. It's hard to say, but if you're a promotion that has USADA and you have the financial backing to have USADA, because it costs a lot of money to test everybody, especially with the testing that they do. And you can't expect every promotion to do that. Like that's just
I'm
so
with
much
you.
investment. I'd rather they give that money to the fighters,
Yep.
instead of just testing them so strenuously. Okay, you have the test that you do pre-event, post-event, or whatever. But other than that, man, like most organizations are not going to invest in that, and you just got to look at it like that. So, but yeah, with the drug testing, we just talked about TJ, Amir, Jon Jones is, all in, him and DC are going back and forth. And do you think, man, DC's still getting tested? He's saying he's retired. I'm thinking he's coming back, man. And I'm thinking like he's trying to set up the fight with Jon Jones at heavyweight.
I'm just never a guy who believes anyone when they say they retire. When Habib said it last week or 2 weeks or whatever, actually it was last month. Oh my God. The weeks are really getting into each other. But last month at UFC 254 when Habib retired, I was surprised, but I'm pretty sure I told everyone like he's going to be back within a year or two, and looks like he's coming back now. Mm-hmm. Like he took a couple weeks off, he hit the beach, he relaxed. I understand he's going through a stressful time with his father passing away, but these guys are fighters. Like they're fighters at heart, man. Like this is what they do for a living. Like I think that for him, that 30-0 is so important, right? So when you hear a guy like that retire, I didn't believe it. In DC's case, it's a little different because he's 41. But here's the other thing: I never thought he was like looking bad. He looked amazing in his fights. Even the fight with Stipe was super close. I think Stipe won 3-2 in the last fight, or 4-1. I can't remember what it was, 4-1 probably. But he didn't look that out of place against the best guy in the world, right? So to me, there's tons of fights left for DC if he wants to fight again. I don't think it's a case where he needs to be forced to retire. Like there's a few other guys, Dana White's doing that too. But he's got another job, John, as a commentator, and I think that he likes that career. Although, and I think you might agree with me on this, as a lot of people did. The last card with him and Rogan was extremely just awful. It was just a really poor show as far as the commentary goes. Like if fans online are talking about the commentary more than the fight, that's a problem. Also, they were getting really distracted and like talking about other fights or like that weren't even happening. Like focus on the fight, guys. Seriously, like if I was play-by-play, I understand you're getting off track sometimes, but if I was doing a play-by-play or color commentary, I'd be focusing 100% of my attention on that fight. And it didn't seem like he was. So, they love DC. It's not like he's going to be, getting a stern warning to, but I do hope the UFC heard that feedback from the fans because it was a poor event. And Joe Rogan did a really bad job, which was really disappointing to see because, Joe Rogan's a legend, man, and you'd like to see the guy take his job seriously, John. It didn't seem like he did any sort of research. Like, you're going to do a commentary for UFC event, at least do the bare minimum, do the research and know who the fighters are, right? Like, come on, let's be fair here. So, anyways, there's a lot I can go on with that.
Yeah, well, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. You bring up a good point about the commentary. Like DC, he's very knowledgeable and he does a great job with Ariel Helwani on their show. But I think that that's what he should be doing. Either he's at the desk as an analyst or he's doing his show with Ariel Helwani. Him commentating is not something that I enjoy. I don't even listen to their commentary because if it's like Michael Bisping or Paul Felder, Brandon Fitzgerald, John Anik, even like not Tom Hardy, Greg, what was it?
Which guy?
Dan Hardy,
okay, yeah.
John Gooden,
they're pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty decent, man, and they're not distracted. They're feeding us information about the fighters.
Agreed, and that's why I love Felder. I think he does a great job. I used to love Brian Stan. I thought he was amazing. God, he was the best guy. But
Frank Mir.
Frank Mir was incredible too. Frank Mir should be doing that right now. Yeah. I don't know why the UFC has such a bad relationship with him. Like he's fighting with bare knuckle now, I think. Why is he doing that? Like seriously, offer this guy a job. When he did the WEC 10 years ago, he was amazing. I remember watching him.
Phenomenal.
He was phenomenal. Great. So I thought him and Stan were the best guys. Yeah. Personally, with DC, I think you made a great point. I think, for him, it's more of the entertainment thing. So give him the Ariel and DC show. If that's what they want to do, that's fine. But as a commentator, he's extremely biased as well. He does have some insight. Obviously, the Habib fight, he was a little biased, but he provided a lot of insight with that fight. But I'll give you an example, like the Blagoy-Ivanov fight for a few months ago when he fought, was it Augusto Sakai? And I think it was the third round, and Sakai grabbed the fence on a takedown. Like he got off his desk and screamed at the ref, hey, take a point. Like that's not your place. And the same, Dan Hardy did the same thing with Herb Dean with that one fight, with the Trinaldo fight with Jay Herbert. Yeah. That's not their place as a commentator. Like the ref has to be able to do their job as well. Like if you're doing your job, John, right now, and you're doing your podcast and someone's screaming at you, like you're not going to be able to do your job. So to me, it's like these guys are learning on the job. And I get that they're professional fighters first and foremost, not commentators. But if you're going to say you're a commentator and a color guy and get paid to do that, you should at least put the research and put the work in my opinion. I just felt like last week they didn't, man.
Yeah, well, Rogan and DC together is the worst
It
combo
was
I've ever
terrible. It was
heard in
just
my
so
life.
bad to listen to. Like, no one wants to
Yeah.
listen to two guys basically having their own little conversation. Like, it's not
Mm.
enjoyable. And I'm like you. You know, I do listen to the commentary, but a lot of time I put it on mute or I turn the volume down because a lot of time what they're saying, what they're even saying, is not really what's reflective of what's going on with my eyes. I hate that, by the way. I'm watching a fight and one guy's like the Jared Gooden and Alan Juban fight last week. Juban won 30-27. He was doing everything in that fight. They kept talking about how good Jared Gooden was. I was like, he's not doing anything. Like, so it's one of those things. But anyways, yeah. I mean, we could talk for 2 hours about that. I don't really want to.
Yeah, well, you know, it's good to kind of get it out there, like
Sure.
just get every angle, you know what I mean, of you know how you watch a fight and when you're covering a fight or just, you know, like preparation is just so important nowadays. If you're not prepared and doing anything, you're just gonna get screwed over, and people are gonna criticize you, especially at the highest level
Yeah.
in the UFC. You need that criticism. You know, you'd have to expect it if you mess up. But yeah, I feel like Rogan, he's flagging it in. And
Yeah.
even though he's an icon of the sport and he's been around forever, and I have all the respect for him and DC, but I feel like those two dudes need to get out of there.
I'm pretty much with you completely, man.
And
Yeah.
it's like Rogan has the biggest podcast in the world. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even think he needs to leave his home,
No.
to be honest with you. He's probably just there to like watch the fights. And he has the best, like he said, he has the best seat in the house, and he gets to talk about it. But yeah, they need to bring in that new fresh blood. John Anik, he's already a legend, man. He's so good.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, and his preparation is flawless. They just need to get him with like one solid guy or maybe two solid guys.
Yeah.
I like Dominic
like
Cruz too. A lot of people, even though people hate him.
I'm not a huge fan of Cruz. I think he's got a lot of ego, personally.
Yeah, he got a lot of ego, but then like he's the one that if you put him with Rogan, like Rogan calms down.
You know, when they went to the 3-man desk, it was something I didn't like. I actually prefer two guys.
Mhm.
So I think it's a little hard to do three guys, John, especially when they're sitting away from each other. Like, when you're sitting beside each other, you can kind of get like cues when you can talk and stuff. When you're like, you know, completely around the other side of the octagon, it's a little difficult. So that's why I think they were kind of like talking over each other a little bit too. I'd rather just go two guys and, you know, Anik and Bisping, or Anik and Felder, or Fitzgerald and Felder, or something like that, or Gooden and Hardy. Like, those guys are good for the European cards. I think that's a nice team. But I'm with you. I just don't think the 3-man booth works. And Rogan with DC, that's not something I ever want to hear again. And I feel like it was just really unfair to the people that bought the card for, you know, what is it? It's like $70 now, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're paying that money to hear two guys kind of like just have their own little conversation. It was pretty annoying to watch, man. Like, you know, if we're just doing this out of the passion, and, you know, we're not making even close to the amount of money that these guys are, and we're doing like 10 times the amount of research, that doesn't really make sense, does it?
No, it doesn't make sense at all. So hopefully they clean that up for 2021 and bring in a good team. And you know, I'm gonna watch the UFC no matter what. People talking about let's boycott the UFC and all that. Come on, get out of here with that. If you love this sport, you're watching the UFC. They're the best guys in the world. Most of them are congregated in the UFC. You know, Bellator has great fighters. Oh, talk about Bellator has great fighters, man. Pitbull, you know, just coming to my mind, like, isn't he probably the best fighter outside the UFC? Like, he's the guy that could go into the UFC and just do complete damage. Even would you rate him higher than Michael Chandler if he went into the UFC?
I think you have to. He just knocked him out last year, right?
Yeah,
I know that he's like, literally just happened last May. And like, now everyone's like, oh, I want to see Chandler fight like Ferguson and Poirier and these like top 3 guys in the world, when this is the guy who knocked him out last year. I've been a fan of this guy since the beginning, since the first time I saw him in Bellator. I've always thought he was a good fighter. He's an excellent fighter. He's won 6 straight fights. So looking at his record right now, and the names on his resume are very impressive too. He's fighting the best guys in the world. I think that you're right, John. I think he probably is the best fighter outside the UFC right now, or the guy he's probably going to fight in the finals, AJ McKee. I love that kid, man. He's incredible too. He's one hell of a prospect. That fight's going to be amazing when it happens, but of course, Pitbull's got to get by Emmanuel Sanchez, and that's not going to be an easy feat. They fought a couple years ago. It was a super close fight. Should be a great rematch, so I'm excited about it. But yeah, I definitely think he's amazing. And, you know, Bellator, they've did a good job, I think, over the years of creating these stars that are like nowhere. Like, no one really knew who Pitbull was, or Chandler, AJ McKee, and these guys have kind of come out of nowhere and emerged as stars. I think if Pitbull was a free agent, the UFC would sign him right away. I think he'd be I think he could possibly even get like a media title shot. I would
Yeah.
like to see him fight Volkanovski. I think it'd be a great fight. I'm very high on him. He's 33 years old, John. So if he's going to sign with the UFC, it's got to happen in the next year or two. Chandler is 34, so he's a little bit older. It's finally his time. I'd like to see Pitbull sign the UFC. I like Bellator, man. It's an alternate spot for fighters to make money, so I'll always respect their organization. But the UFC is just the better product, the better show, the better fighters, and I'd love to see him test his skills against the elite guys at 145.
And he's not even big for 145. I heard he could make 135.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So think about that, and think about him going up to lightweight and just starching Michael Chandler. Like how much power Pitbull has, and it's like his technique and everything overall, like his wrestling, everything is much better. And I think he's getting better as we watch him through this tournament right now. And yeah, Emmanuel Sanchez is a great fighter, but man, I don't know. I feel like they're just meeting at the wrong time again, in the rematch or whatever.
Yep.
But yeah, like AJ McKee, he proposes like a unique set of problems for Pitbull because he's like so long and fast. And then that ground is ridiculous. So I'm excited to see that matchup. I think that's going to be like one of the fights of the year in 2021.
Yep.
It's going to happen, man. And AJ McKee, man, a big fan of that guy. And Aaron Pico, man, like, what do you think about Bellator kind of turning their tide now? It's like they were focused like the last couple of years of like getting the rampages and the Fedors and all that. But now it's like they switch gears. And I feel like this is the best move that they can make is to focus on the younger generation and sign all the young talent. Because a lot of these young talented guys, they're signing with Bellator rather than the UFC and not going through the contenders.
Like Khabib's cousin, I think, right? The other Nurmagomedov. I was surprised. Pico, I mean, listen, Pico is he's still a great prospect, but the losses, it still bothers me. Some of those losses he's had. So I'm not completely sold on him as like a superstar, like in the like AJ McKee. It's crazy because they were both I think they're still at Body Shop together, right? But a few years ago, everyone's like Pico's the guy, and now McKee's the guy. So yeah, I mean, sometimes in the sport, these guys just emerge out of nowhere. But I do like what Bellator. I think they made a good like choice to move away from, like you said, those legends. Mm-hmm. Think about it. A few years ago, they had freaking Royce Gracie fight Ken Shamrock the fourth time. It was one of the worst fights I've ever seen. Oh my God, Kimbo Slicer's dad at 3,000. Was that his guy's name? Dad at 3,000? 5,000?
Yeah.
I can't remember his name.
10,000, whatever it is. Yeah, he almost died, right?
Dude, he had like I think he literally had a heart attack in the ring. Like, So I'm glad they've gone away from that stuff.
Yeah,
I'm just laughing so hard right now.
Yeah, because their image was not so great, in the transition. And then Scott kind of, steered the ship into the right direction after some weird fights.
Yeah.
And I think it has a lot to do with like the television deals that are coming up. You know what I mean? Like they need to put out a good product, man, not just like these wild, like crazy, because think about like Kimbo Slice. He's passed away since then. Yep. And Dada 5,000 is doing probably backyard brawls right now as we speak in Miami somewhere, right? So it's just like, man, focus on the prospects. Let's build these guys, have these tournaments. I like the tournaments. It allows us to learn about these fighters much more. And I'm looking forward to seeing like Corey Anderson, see what he can do in Bellator. I'm looking forward to seeing what Nemkov, the light heavyweight champ, seeing what he can do. Man, there's so many guys that we don't like. Most fans don't know because they fight in Bellator, but they should watch Bellator and look at the top 5 of each division and just follow them, because a lot of those guys eventually are going to make their way over to the UFC and they're going to compete.
I agree with you. By the way, I'm looking at it's Data 5,000, right? So I'm looking at his Wikipedia right now. So he's only had 3 fights, by the way. His last fight was against Kimbo in 2016. It really wasn't even that long ago, but apparently he had he put together a promotion called what's it called? BYB Extreme Fighting Series. I didn't know they had a card, but apparently they had their first event this year, John. And they use a triangular cage, a triangular ring. This is ridiculous. I'm looking at this right now. It says Dada 5,000, the self-proclaimed smallest cage in combat sports, known as the Trigon, the triangular cage. What the hell is this? This Dada 10,000 guy, man. I love it.
Yeah, sometimes you just this world of MMA.
The point is, I know. The point is, though, I mean, Bellator's clearly made a good choice going away from the aging vets. I'll be honest, I was a little surprised they passed on Anderson Silva. Scott Coker's come out and said he's not interested. Now one's come out, Chatry says he's not interested. PFL says they're not interested. Like at this point, he doesn't have any options. Maybe Ryzen or bare knuckle. But I'll be honest with you, like I feel like I understand Anderson's 45. I get that, and he's lost a few fights in a row. But let's be fair to the guy. He lost to 3 guys ranked in the top 10: Israel Adesanya, Jared Cannonier, and Uriah Hall. And I actually thought he looked okay against Uriah Hall. Like he didn't look that bad. He got caught in the fourth round, I think, or third round, and got fourth round actually. He got finished against a guy with a lot of KO power. I'm not looking at that fight like Dana White and some people are saying like this guy's completely shot. And it's funny, like all of a sudden these promotions are like morally aware that they shouldn't have a 45-year-old fighting. Like what the hell's going on here, John? Like they're like, oh, we don't want to see Anderson fight. We want to see him get hurt. Like they've got guys that are 50 years old fighting. Now they don't want Anderson, a guy who's like the greatest ever. So actually, maybe that's a good segue to the Hall of Fame talk. I know you wanted to talk about that, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that like towards the end. You know what I mean? But
Sure.
going back to Anderson though, it's funny to me that Anderson has never expressed any interest in fighting for any of those promotions, but they want to deny him already. Like Anderson Silva still competed against Israel Adesanya, who is probably going to end up being the most dominant champ at 185, right? And he competed and he did decent, even though it looked like Israel was kind of. Did you think Israel was pulling back a little bit in that fight against Anderson?
I think a lot of guys did.
Out of respect?
Yeah, I think so. But
yeah,
we really never know.
We'll never know.
He's a tricky matchup because of his length and his height and stuff. Like he's still got the physical gifts, but the chin's gone. That's the
chin's gone. Yeah. But he has looked pretty decent for being 45 years old against the top guys in the world. And I don't see why he would not be able to get signed by any other promotion and fight like mid-level guys. Why not? You know what I mean? Or just do one-offs. But he could probably go to boxing. You never know what Anderson's thinking right now.
That's a great point, too. I mean, Rory Jones Jr. is fighting this weekend, right? He's 51. He's fighting. Mike Tyson's 54. I'm just telling you, we don't want to sign Anderson Silva. Mike Tyson's 54 and he's fighting this weekend. Rory Jones Jr. is a guy they've talked about fighting Anderson in the past. Maybe that's a fight that could happen. You're right. I think that maybe he will look outside of MMA. He's talked many times about boxing again. I think he has boxed at least once or twice in his career. So I think he could do okay at boxing, especially if he's matched up against a guy with the same age. So I think that'd be fun. But I still feel like Ryzen is a really good spot for him too. He could fight some like easy freak show kind of fights. Like it'd be fun. Like let's put Anderson Silva in there with a guy who's 500 pounds. Let's try that. Why not? At this point, why not?
Why not? For real. Now, the other topic that I wanted to get into was Francis Ngannou, man. Like, I feel like people are forgetting who Francis Ngannou is. And, man, I think he's getting kind of screwed over right now, don't you think? Like, he's not fighting. So that means when you're not fighting, people are forgetting about you. Stipe doesn't seem like he's too interested in fighting Francis again. And I feel like Francis has earned his way back up to a title shot. What do you think? Do you feel like because of the Jon Jones situation that Francis is kind of put on the back burners and being disrespected by the promotion somewhat?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, this guy has did everything you could possibly ask him to do to get that title shot, and it still hasn't been booked. There's some rumors floating around. Dana White said that March is a target for that fight, UFC 259 in March. So hopefully that's what happens, because the thing is, like, this division's getting really logjam now. Curtis Blades is fighting Lewis this weekend. Like, obviously, Ngannou's going to get the title shot before Blades because he knocked him out. But Blades deserves a title shot too, right? And you can't just sit around waiting and fighting guys forever. So they've got to get this division moving. The other guy that everyone's talking about is Jon Jones. I mean, Jon Jones comes in, he flips the division upside down. I personally would have been okay with him getting the title shot just because I think that Jones versus Miocic is such a great fight. I would love to see it. But if you want to do the fair thing, it's got to be Francis, because you look at his resume, man. Since 2018, he's won 4 straight fights by knockout over Rosenstruck, DeSantos, Cain Velasquez, and Blades. And if you count up the time, it's like less than 3 minutes of cage time in like the last 2 years. Like this year, he only fought 20 seconds, which is it's unbelievable that a guy this talented in his prime fought 20 seconds all year. Like they should have given him another fight. And I understand he wants the title shot, but we all knew that fight with DC and Stipe was happening. I think Francis could have easily taken another fight just to make some money. Like, you got to make money too. Like, look at Curtis Blades, right? He was saying yesterday, I make $200,000 a fight. I can fight a bum and make $200,000. They really couldn't have found someone in the top 15 for Ngannou to fight this year to stay busy. Like, I understand he wouldn't have fought a top guy, but I'm sure they could have found someone like Volkov is a guy he's never fought. That would have been a decent fight. He could have at least made some money doing it, right? So, he definitely got screwed. I wouldn't say he definitely got screwed, but it does look like they want to make it right and give him the title shot. I mean, the guy is such a beast, man. And if you look at his UFC record, 10-2 with all 10 wins by stoppage. Unbelievable. He's so good, man. Big Francis Ngannou fan, and I just hope he shored up his takedown defense, because that first fight with Stipe was just, after that first round, was just Stipe taking him down over and over. And if that's what happens again, I mean, he'll never get a title shot probably after that. So it's important. The other guy, just briefly, Alistair Overeem, he keeps saying he wants to make another run at age 41. Love Overeem. He's a legend. You talk about legends, man. Like, it doesn't get more legendary than the Reem, right? But age 41, he's got to make a run for it now. So another guy that there's just so many guys now at heavyweight. You're right. Like, every division's it's like the most talented UFC you've ever seen, right? So these divisions where the champs are hurt and stuff, like bantamweight, like you mentioned with Jan, it hurts the rest of the guys because they keep fighting and they deserve a shot, but they can't get it because there's no available spot. So
the Reem, I see him getting close. You know what I mean? I see him getting a big fight soon booked. Or does he have a fight? I don't even know.
The Reem, he's fighting Volkov. Yeah, he's fighting Volkov in February.
That's a big fight, though. That will propel him into, if he wins this one, he'd propel him into a top 5, fight. You know,
I agree. Like, it's just like, who's he fighting next? It's so hard to say because Blades and him are friends and training partners.
Yeah, that's
what's already too. Yeah, they wouldn't fight
logical.
again.
That's no logical, right?
I'm with you, but I don't think they'd fight again.
No,
we saw what happened the first time too. That was a brutal beating.
If I'm in the UFC this weekend, you got Blades versus Lewis, right? And I love Lewis, man. I feel like we're not appreciating Derek Lewis, not just because of his knockouts, but his outside
his balls are hot.
Yeah, his interviews, and he's just he knows how to play it up, and he's not like out there talking shit about people. He knows how to like take questions in and just give out good responses. Yeah. And he knows at the end of the day it's nothing serious. And I enjoy that about him. That's a different aspect. I think fighters can learn from that. You know, you could take, if you're a guy that's kind of cynical and you like to joke around, that's a way you could approach interviews just like that, just like how Derek Lewis does. Yeah. And you could create a personality around it, not just around like the violence that you create in the cage. And I love Derek Lewis, but I think the UFC, they figure if Lewis can beat Blades, then they can set up a fight with the rematch with Francis Ngannou, so that Jon Jones can fight Stipe.
Yeah, that first fight was terrible, but I think the rematch could be better. I mean,
that's gonna be way better. I think
so too. Out. Also, I picked Lewis in the first fight. I just thought at that time that he was a little bit more experienced, and he ended up winning a really awful, ugly decision. But since then, both guys have been really exciting. It was such a bad fight, man. We all know that it's one of the worst ever. But I think since then they both kind of proven that they want to put that fight behind them. So I'm with you, but man, this is such a tough fight for Lewis against Blades, a guy who has such he's probably the best wrestler ever at heavyweight, besides maybe like Kane and DC, I guess, or Lesnar.
Maybe utilizing the wrestling.
Yes, I think he might even be better at them. Like, because you look at the stats, I think he actually has the most takedowns landed. He might have passed Kane recently or something. So he's incredible. I think that's a tough fight for him this weekend. But the winner of that, especially if it is Lewis against Ngannou, does kind of make sense. But, again, I do feel like that hopefully they can get that fight done with Stipe for March. I see Tristan's got a question here.
Yeah, there's prediction for Jan Sterling. He's picking Sterling because of the ground game.
That's a great fight. Do we have? I think we have odds for it. Let me just double check, guys. Peter Jan. We have betting odds.
It is.
They took down a line. They took the betting line down.
To think about if the fight does go to the ground, what Sterling can do with Jan, but I don't see Jan staying on the ground much. I think he's so good at scrambling. And this is what I heard from like people that have trained with Jan for years, that he has a limitless gas tank and he can scramble like crazy. And it's the big question is, can Sterling catch him in those scrambles, in those transitions on the ground, if it does go to the ground? You know what I mean? Like, I don't even see him being able to take down Jan. Jan's defensive wrestling is great. You know what I mean? Like, he might win, but I don't see Jan I don't see Sterling like being able to take him to the ground for too long of a period of time. So I'm taking Jan. Yeah. I think Jan will defend the title. I could see Jan beating all the guys up. I don't see early finishes. Jan, he likes to cook guys, and I see him maybe finishing this fight in the 4th or 5th round like he did with Aldo.
Yeah, I can see that too. There are odds right now listed, but they were out a few like a few weeks ago, I guess. Jan was favored like I think minus 300, maybe something like that, minus 250. So he's the clear favorite in this fight. But I think Tristan's right. I mean, Sterling has a clear path of victory. He gets the fight to the ground. He can submit him or grind him out for wrestling. But I'm with you, man. I think the Jan's defensive wrestling and his striking is it's a lot better, a lot cleaner, more power too. I was at the fight last year. He knocked out Faber. That was crazy, man. Like that was. I mean, why did they even book that fight? Faber is so old. I know he's coming off the win over Ricky Simon. That was a crazy win, but still, like I saw that fight. I was like, man, this is such a mismatch.
That was like a setup fight.
Yeah, 100% it was. And
yeah,
they gave him Aldo next. Fight. Aldo, even though he lost the fight against Moraes on that card. Anyways.
Yeah, but I think Jan, he's that talent, man. He's what you call a legit prospect that turned into a contender. Now he's a champion.
By the way, the guy that beat him, Magomedov, he's in Bellator now. So I think that's a great signing by them. Like I'm surprised UFC didn't get that guy. I've heard good things about him. So I'm with you completely about Jan. I'm very high on that guy.
Yeah, well, now, with Francis Ngannou, going back to Francis Ngannou, I feel like, they need to book him real fast, like for early next year. They're just wasting their time with him, man. Like eventually he's going to end up going to Bellator or something.
And Stipe's had so many injuries too. Stipe's been like injured and DC was hurt for a while. And getting that trilogy done, like I think they each fought once a year and then DC had the Lewis fight as well. But basically it was just, they fought once a year every summer, the last 3 years. It's really just time for the division to move on. 100% with you.
Yeah, the eye pokes in that, like, going back to DC and in that fight with Stipe, they had a lot of eye pokes in that fight, man. I felt like that if you took away the eye pokes, man, because it seemed like the eye pokes still have damage to DC. Like he's talking about, like he looks at his face and it doesn't look normal, and I believe so, man. They need to change something with the eye pokes. They need to penalize guys that immediately, like once you poke the eye immediately, especially if it's like if you're from distance and you like reach out and you poke the guy, because that's what, like, a lot of the times that's what happens is like dudes flicking their hands out and then they poke the guy in the eye, right? I think they should take points away from fighters.
I'm with you on that one too. They gotta fix it. And cage grabbing, too many warnings, like 3 warnings, and then they take a point. Like it's ridiculous. Same with low blows too. Low blows a little different because I do think the majority of them are unintentional. And it's part of the sport. You're going to hit someone low, but the eye pokes and the cage grabs are something that John, we all know the fighters all know the rules, right? Like, and the referees speak to them in the back. So like, these are the rules, guys. If you don't follow the rules, I will take points. And then they go in the cage and they warn them 3 times and then finally maybe take a point. So I'm with you. I think referees got to do it more often. Listen, I understand the refs got a tough job. They don't want to really change the result of the fight that much. They that's why they don't like taking away points, because they're like, these guys' livelihoods are on the line here, right? But we know the rules, so I'm with you. If you guys got the rate, like the fingers out like this, and we see it all the time. Jon Jones, a lot of guys, it's like, dude, you can look at for instance, Alan Belcher when he fought Michael Bisping. Alan Belcher had his eye poked in that fight, and he lost the technical decision after the fight was stopped. He never fought again due to an eye injury, right? So it's something that's a super serious problem in the sport. So I'm 100% with you on that.
Yeah, and they're implementing the replay, and I think that's a good idea. I feel like you should have something like that, like a backup plan. And I also think they just should have referees on the outside of the cage, maybe 1 or 2, so when they could have a different angle of what's going on when something's stuck along the fence. You remember on the Contender Series?
Oh yeah,
when
mouthpiece.
When JP Bays, he had the guillotine.
Oh, that yes.
Yeah, that situation, right? And it's like you can't really get an angle of what's going on.
Right.
The referee's doing the best that he can do. You need to have someone outside. Some other promotions, they do have that. They do have referees on the outside to kind of help the guy inside. Right. To understand what's going on.
Oh, you mean like Pride? Remember Pride?
Yeah, like Pride, yeah. And Ryzen does it too.
There, push the fighters back in.
Yeah, Ryzen does that right now, and I think one championship has a couple officials outside to kind of see a different angle of what's going on, and they kind of help the guy in the cage. There's all these adjustments you can make, and some promotions are doing it, some promotions are not, and that's why it goes back to the commissions. I don't think commissions do anything. I think that they just take money from people.
Oh, they're
just a waste of time.
Look at the Mike Rodriguez thing, the Mike Rodriguez fight with Ed Herman. They just appealed it and they said we're not doing anything about it. Like, the guy got completely screwed in that fight. Like, they stopped the fight due to a low blow, but it was a body shot that should have finished it. He ends up losing. they screwed the dude, and they just said, "Oh, well, the referee's the sole arbiter of the fight." Just they don't take any sort of like they just go. They say that this is the ref's decision, and we're not taking any responsibility for it.
All right. Well, the last thing before I let you go, man,
Sure.
get into this. Last week we had Mark Ratner get into the UFC Hall of Fame, and it was a great induction. I guess he's contributed so much, and the guy looks like he's 100 years old. Like, doesn't he? Like when you saw
he
him, I was
does.
like, dang,
Like
he
Santa
got
Claus.
old real fast.
Santa Claus, bro.
Yeah, and
Mark Reiner's been around for a long time. I mean, he's been an important part of the promotion, especially with regards to like drug testing and stuff.
Yeah.
I think that most fans don't really care. I think they spent a little bit too long with that video piece on the pay-per-view, although, it's a respect thing, so I get that. But yeah, I'm not surprised he's in I believe as a builder, right? Like there's different categories to the Hall of Fame. It's not just
contributor wing or something like that. Yeah.
Yes.
But like with the Hall of Fame, that's the UFC, right? Like it's subjective, you know what I mean? Like they choose who they want to put in there. It's not like there's a voting system. So like if you had, for me, every guest, they get to choose one individual that they could put into the MMA Hall of Fame, like just overall, like from the beginning to now. Like who would be your induction?
I mean, there's so many guys, right? Like, and I didn't want to like pick anyone that was chosen already by the other guests you've had on recently or guys that were in the Hall of Fame already. So it came down to, I mean, I'm still kind of deciding who I want to say right now because I don't want to say two guys. I want to say one for you. I think that, I'm going to take the low hanging fruit here, but I'm going to go with Anderson Silva because I think he's relevant right now. He's in the news. There's a few other guys I would like to pick too, but I'll go with Anderson because you haven't had anyone pick him yet. He just finished his UFC contract. He's arguably like a top 3 fighter of all time. For many years, John, he was the greatest power pound fighter in the world before Jon Jones kind of came around. So I have a lot of respect for Anderson Silva. Now, obviously, the PED thing, that bothers me a lot, but I don't think it's going to affect his Hall of Fame induction whatsoever. Even Dana White said that. I understand your MMA Hall of Fame is much different than the UFC, so maybe you have rules as far as PED goes, but I'm pretty sure you guys inducted Jon Jones, right? So to me, Anderson, he's the next guy because you look at Anderson Silva's his legacy in the sport. It's like there's not many guys like him, man. I mean, first off, he's still fighting at a high level at age 45, fighting top 10 opponents. It's insane. Second off, he's been fighting since 97 as a pro, 23 years, 24th years now. And in the UFC, he has 17 wins, and he does have now 7 losses, but 17 wins, John, including 16 in a row, which is still a record. Middleweight champion, legend. He'd be my guy. What were we gonna say? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're making a great point, and like for this MMA Hall of Fame, there's no rules. It's who you want, why you want that fighter or individual into the Hall of Fame. It's your choice. You know why? Because you're a mind that studies the game, that knows the sport, and I feel like there's no just you're making the justification for putting that person into the Hall of Fame. PEDs or not, man, it's like there's a contribution level that these fighters or individuals put into the sport that is unmatched. And Anderson Silva, come on, man. I think he's a big reason why the UFC blew up in the mid 2000s, man. Like he dominated. He made some crazy highlights that they could use for the next 50 years during his reign as the champion. And you said it, pound for pound, there was nobody even coming close to him for a while. Just insane.
I mean, like, and the amount of like quality wins he has, and it's so easy. That's the thing with MMA, right? It's so easy to look back and be like, oh, the competition wasn't that good. At the time, it was the best guys in the world. Yeah, now they're old. I get that, but look at who he beat at the time, right? Like Rich Franklin was the middleweight champion. Chris Lieben was knocking everyone out. Nate Marquardt was a beast. Dan Henderson was a Pride champion, double champion in Pride. Forrest Griffin was that's the other thing. He moved up to light heavyweight too. And to me, the best fighters of all time are guys that fight at multiple weight classes. That's why I do rank a guy like GSP so high. A guy like Randy Couture, I love him too. He's right at the top for me. Mighty Mouse fought 2 weight classes, right? Like these guys that fight multiple weight classes, to me, you get a little extra boost. I still think Jon Jones is the best, but once he fights at heavyweight, John, like there's going to be no debate, especially if he wins that belt, right? So for me, Anderson fighting at middleweight, dominating. Actually, he fought at welterweight first, so he fought at 3 weight classes, and then at light heavyweight and did well too. But again, the quality wins. Damian Maia, Fedor Belfort, Chael Sonnen. The Chael fight was legendary. Obviously, the first fight, The second fight was good too, but the first fight was like a legendary fight. He has arguably the greatest knockout of all time against Vitor Belfort. It's been almost 10 years from that. Can you believe that? It's been almost 10 years from that, John. Unbelievable. And, the guy's just amazing. But again, the last few years have not been kind to him. Imagine he stopped fighting when he beat Stephan Bonner. Imagine he was like, you know what, I'm done. At age 37 in 2012. Imagine that. And he retired at 33-4 with a 60-fight win streak in the UFC.
Complete different conversation.
Right, he wouldn't have tested positive, so it's like completely different argument almost. But even with the fights against Weidman and the DC fight, the Bisping fight, to me, he's still one of the GOATs, and I'll always love Anderson the Spider Silva, man. Even despite the losses, even despite the positive drug test, which really does bother me a lot. But what I saw from him during the 2000s, John, like there was no one like him. It was must-watch TV. He was like the Barry Bonds of fighting. Like you had to tune in when he was up to bat. So I love the guy, man. And for me, it's a no-brainer to induct him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he had the style that was the riskiest style of them all, and he dominated guys with the riskiest style, with the hands down, put his back against the fence. It was just so exciting, man. It was just like, thinking back about it, it was over 10 years ago that we were watching it and like trying to cover it as best as we can, but it was just like you were in awe, like you were expecting something incredible. Adam, man, I appreciate the time, man. Do let everybody know like where they can find you. Maybe you got some stuff in the pipeline that you could give us a preview on, and we'll get out of here.
Sure, man. Well, I appreciate you having me on, and all the people that sent in questions, guys. It was fun, so appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter at MMAdamMartin. That's where you guys can follow me. The websites are right for bjpen.com, MMAoddsbreaker.com, odds.com, and MMA Ratings on Net. I got a ton of writing that I'm always doing, so definitely just check my Twitter. I'm always like posting stuff there about fights, especially on fight nights. And I do have a podcast I want to plug Tuesday and Thursday, 10 a.m. at the MMA Oddsbreaker YouTube channel. I talk about MMA. Actually, tomorrow I'll be talking about the Mike Tyson fight. So we'll do a little bit of boxing. There's no Bellator this week, so we'll do some boxing talk, John. But thanks again, man, for having me on. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad that I continued the trend of the Canadians coming aboard.
Definitely. Yeah, man, check out the podcast, like the one that he does on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I go on there from time to time when I'm in front of my computer and enjoy some of the commentary.
We love to have you, man. We love you when you come on, John. I know the time's difficult for you, but I love having you on, man.
No doubt, man. Thank you so much. And next week we'll have Adam's partner in crime at Odds Breakers, Cole Shelton, coming on. It's gonna be fun to finally get to talk with him, because I've never actually ever spoken with him, just online. So it's that's why I like to do this, is because I get to speak with, even though me and Adam have spoke before and done podcasts.
Yes.
But other guys that I bring on, I've never spoken with them, and this is why it's so great to have this platform, and I enjoy that SCMP MMA is allowing me to do this. So, and man. Thank you so much, man. And everybody, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and